This is OwlUp, where learning happens in minutes, not hours. For a deeper journey, explore all our courses at owlup.co. Now, let's dive in. Welcome back to Chapter 2 of our series, What Makes Great Leaders? Stories from History and Business. In today's episode, titled Visionary Leaders, Those Who Saw the Future, we'll explore the key traits that set visionary leaders apart and how their foresight has shaped our world. So, let's dive in. A single product dismissed as a toy in its first year quietly evolves into billions of devices and rewires how humans communicate. Here's the twist. The people who spark changes like this aren't just lucky. They're systematically better at seeing around corners. Some people seem to guess right about the future over and over. But when you zoom in, it isn't guessing. They treat the future less like a mystery and more like a puzzle. Scattered pieces of social change, emerging tech, shifting economics, and quiet policy moves that, when assembled, reveal a rough picture of what's coming. Think of how a great chef plans a menu. Not based on today's dish alone, but on which ingredients are becoming available, which tastes are spreading, and which tools are about to enter the kitchen. Visionary leaders operate similarly. They notice early signals most of us scroll past, then turn those signals into bets, new products, new industries, even new national strategies that feel risky at first, then obvious in hindsight. In this series, we'll unpack how they actually do that and what you can borrow for your own career. Unlike prophets, these leaders are more like disciplined researchers of tomorrow. They collect hard evidence about where technology, demographics, capital, and regulation are actually moving, then stress test their hunches against that reality. Apple didn't guess the smartphone. It read the trajectory of mobile chips, networks, and consumer behavior. Lee Kuan Yew didn't hope Singapore would prosper. He mapped which industries could thrive between Asia's giants. Visionary thinking looks magical from the outside, but up close it's a repeatable craft, part pattern recognition, part courage, and part social persuasion. Look closely at leaders who genuinely change the game and a common pattern emerges. They treat vision less as a single lightning bolt and more as three muscles they keep exercising. First, they build an evidence-based picture of several plausible futures, 5 to 20 years out. Not a fantasy storyboard, but a grounded map of how technology, economics, politics, and culture might interact. Steve Jobs didn't just like sleek gadgets. He tracked the compounding power of mobile processors, falling data costs, and rising consumer impatience with clunky devices. Elon Musk didn't wake up one day and decide rockets should be reusable. He watched where material science, automation, and private capital were heading, then calculated what that could mean for launch economics. Second, they translate that abstract map into uncomfortably concrete moves. Visionaries don't stop at slides and speeches. They turn long-range hypotheses into near-term experiments. A V1 product, a pilot factory, a small policy trial. Early iPhones were missing features competitors boasted about. The point wasn't perfection. It was to start the feedback loop on a radically different interface. Singapore's early industrial parks looked modest next to advanced economies, but they were wedges into global supply chains that didn't yet fully exist. Third, they learned to pull others into a story that initially sounds unrealistic. Bold ideas are resource-hungry. They need capital, talent, regulatory air cover, and time. That only arrives when enough people can see themselves inside the future you're proposing. Jeff Bezos, in his 2000 letter, didn't simply claim the internet would be big. He broke down how an ecosystem of sellers, developers, and partners would compound value for everyone involved. Lee Kuan Yew didn't just describe skyscrapers. He framed an identity shift, from vulnerable trading post to disciplined, high-skill hub, and aligned education, infrastructure, and law around it. Crucially, none of this requires supernatural gifts. These three capabilities, rigorous future scanning, translation into present-day bets, and coalition building are skills. You can practice them in a startup, a government agency, or a two-person side project. The difference between visionary and daydreamer is that one keeps connecting the distant horizon back to today's hard constraints, and then shipping, revising, and scaling based on what reality sends back. Over time, those cycles don't just anticipate the future, they help create it. When you zoom in on specific people, those three muscles become surprisingly concrete. Take Lee Kuan Yew. In the 1960s, he bet that a tiny, resource-poor island could become indispensable if it focused obsessively on reliability. Clean government, world-class ports, predictable rules. That wasn't a slogan. It showed up as strict anti-corruption laws, meticulous port operations, and aggressive courting of multinational manufacturers. Decades later, Singapore's GDP per capita tells you how far that long bet went. Or look at Jeff Bezos in 2000, laying out a flywheel where more sellers, more selection, and better customer experience would reinforce one another. It sounded abstract then. Today, digital ecosystems dominate where that kind of compounding logic took root. SpaceX followed a similar playbook. Reusable rockets looked fanciful until they were landing, slashing launch costs, and quietly unlocking businesses like global broadband constellations that only make sense in a cheaper-to-orbit world. The next decade will reward leaders who treat foresight like a portfolio, not a prophecy. As AI compresses timelines and climate shocks ripple through supply chains, you'll need parallel paths. One safe, one stretching, one wild. Think of it as arranging your career or organization like an investment fund. Some capital in stability, some in adjacent bets, a sliver in moonshots. The surprise is how quickly wild ideas become mandatory once external conditions flip. You won't become Lee Kuan Yew or Jeff Bezos overnight, but you can start behaving more like them in small, repeatable ways. Treat each meeting, data set, or client complaint as a weak signal about what could matter next. Over time, those tiny acts of curiosity stack, like regular deposits in an investment account, compounding into the kind of judgment others call visionary. Before next week, ask yourself, 1. If I zoom 10 years into the future, what is one shift in my industry that feels obvious but under-acknowledged today? Just like how the episode's founders spotted, for example, remote work, AI-driven tooling, creator-led brands before everyone else. And where do I already see early, concrete signals of it? 2. Looking at my calendar and projects this week, which one activity, meeting, experiment, or customer conversation could I deliberately repurpose as a future scouting session to observe weak signals, rather than just execute today's to-do list? 3. Who is one edge user or unconventional thinker in my world, a power user, a frustrated customer, a younger colleague, that I can talk to in the next 48 hours, and what 2 specific questions can I ask them to better glimpse the future they're already living in? This was OwlUp, your daily step forward. To keep learning with structured courses and more insights, go to owlup.co. Until tomorrow!